Seem to be quite a lot of dead flies and bees and things. Uh, Slowly making progress. I'm just trying to put all the loose things into boxes just to make it a bit easier when the packers come. And then I'll start taking the car apart, I guess. I'm going to wrap all the parts up in bubble wrap, and hopefully that just stops them all getting scraped and bashed around. I am slowly making progress, getting the garage all packed up, ready to move. That's happening in less than 2 weeks now. So after next week, I have professional packers coming to pack up the house and the garage and help me move everything. I rang around looking for quotes, and a lot of companies just want to do quotes online. They just want you to fill in a form and say, this is what I have, how much will it cost to move? And of course, my situation is a bit different because I've got all this workshop stuff to move and all these car parts and various other random strange things. So I actually wanted somebody to come and have a look at what I had and do a proper quote. So that meant going with one of the bigger companies. They came out, they did that, they did the quote. Then they came out a second time, the guy who actually is in charge of the trucks and the loading, and he wanted to have a look to make sure the access was good and see the sort of things I want to move, and he was all fine with that. So what I've been doing is trying to get everything together to make it easier for them to pack. Everything's I already keep a lot of things in these plastic tubs. They're really handy. They're stackable if you don't fill them up too high. And I've got a lot of things in those sort of tubs. Things like my nuts and bolts, I've just wrapped up all the little containers in plastic so the screws and bolts and things don't all fall out. I did just discover today, and I'm annoyed I didn't know this sooner, but this is my little cart I use as a welding trolley for my TIG welder. I think it just came from Repco. It's one of their little mechanics cart things, very cheap. It's I just noticed there's an edge there that's bent out, but it works really well. It's only light duty, of course, but a TIG welder doesn't weigh much, so it works fine for holding the TIG and the helmets and the gloves and all that kind of stuff. And I just realized today that the width across the top is the perfect size for these stackable boxes. So that's actually sitting right on that lip, locked in place, which is really handy because these lower two boxes are actually full of dollies and offcuts of steel, so they're quite heavy. So being able to put them on top of here has worked really well. There are certain things they won't take. Aerosol cans, so paint, things like that, carb cleaner, that kind of stuff. So I've got a big tub there of all the naughty things. Another one there full of glues and solvents and other bits and pieces. I'm guessing they'll put all these smaller boxes into larger ones. They'll take the drill. I do need to dismantle the mill, or at least break it into more manageable chunks, which is how it was delivered. It came on a pallet in a couple of pieces, and that's why I've got the chain block up there to be able to pull the top of it off the mill off. You can just lift that whole top unit straight off, and then the base will just unbolt from the stand, which is very light duty. So that shouldn't be too bad to move. I managed to assemble it by myself, so assuming some experienced movers will be able to handle that no problem. The things, all of my solvents and fuels and things, they won't take those. I'll take those myself. But I have had to strip down the car. And if you've ever wondered what a gift-wrapped pre-war vintage race car would look like, it's probably something like this. So I've taken it all apart, and I've just wrapped things up in this bubble wrap, mainly just to protect the paint and stop things getting scratched and bashed around, and just also to indicate to them some of the stuff you have to be careful of. So, I don't want any of this battered. They came and had a look at it. They're fine with moving it all, and I'm sure they'll be good with it all. Things like obviously the gearbox, you don't want to drop that. the magnesium sump, which is up under there. You don't want to pile things on top of that and break the fins off. The steering box is another one where it's just an aluminium casting, so things like that, if they're treated badly, they could break. So basically what's going to happen is 2 days the week after next, they're coming to pack everything up. I will have to move the cars outside, and they'll have to live outside for a night. I actually bought a car cover for the Austin, just in case the weather's bad, but just to cover it up. And they'll use the space for arranging the boxes. The next 2 days, they're going to come and pack everything up into the trucks. Apparently there'll be 2 trucks. When I moved to Wellington 5 years ago, it took 2 20-foot containers to shift everything. And I think I've got an extra half container's worth of stuff now. So it's an awful lot to move. It's not going to be cheap either. So I was looking forward to the new shed, which is huge, getting some sort of hoist possibly, but that's going to have to wait because just the cost of moving is so high. And then when I do get into the new shed, I actually want to partition part of it off to turn into a kind of office and a clean space where I can have my electronics gear and my model making stuff and 3D printer and laser cutter and things like that. So the house we're moving to is quite small. There isn't really room for all of that stuff in the house. I think most of the stuff they should be able to move fine. I do need to empty the grit out of the sandblasting cabinet. I think with all of that gone, that won't be too heavy. I think a couple of people can move that, no problem. Those shelves there I'm going to leave because they're actually bolted to the wall. Obviously, living in an earthquake zone, you make everything like that very secure. So everything on the shelves will be coming, but the shelves will remain. But I will take this set of shelves with me, and then I'll just have to either make or buy more shelving once I'm up there. The wheels, I do want to touch up the paint on these. These I've told them to be especially careful of because, like when they got sent up to me, everyone's first thought is to stack them on top of each other, but as we saw before, that just bends the spokes, damages the spokes. So I've told them they have to be extra careful with these, and I'm probably actually going to, once I get more tape, completely wrap them in cardboard, encase them, and make sure they don't stack them vertically on top of each other. If they're like this, I can do a pair back to back and then wrap them in cardboard, make sure they realize. I think that'll be fine. Same with the radiator, I'll probably wrap that up. The little Austin, I haven't had time to get that VIN'd yet. I need to find out what's happening with my VIC card, my Vintage Card Club identity card, which will help with the VINing process. Basically, that card says that car is a period correct 1930s car. So when they VIN it, they'll VIN it to that standard. So you don't need seatbelts, you don't need indicators, you don't need a windscreen, obviously, which will make it a lot easier to get that on the road as a period correct car. The MG just got its warrant, which was good. I did ask the guy about the brake hoses that he told me I needed to change and actually got him to show me where the cracks were. And funnily enough, he couldn't. He's like, oh, well, maybe it was this. It kind of looked a little bit like it was cracking, but yeah, that's not too good. I know people who don't know much about cars, when you go to a garage like that, you're sort of trusting them that they're not going to rip you off. And I don't think this garage rips people off because they weren't doing the work, so they gained nothing from saying the hoses were cracked. But even someone like me who knows that car backwards, they'll try and they'll say things like, oh, there's a little bit of wear in that, or there's a little bit of play in that. So you always have to be careful. It's tricky. And I think in New Zealand you have to be very careful because if the car gets flagged in the system for any reason, I think it can cause all sorts of problems. You can get into a little bit stuck. So you are a little bit at their mercy. But this should all be relatively easy to move. And I'll tell them all the things to be careful of. So Obviously, I want them to be very careful of the threads on the end here, especially after all the effort I put into actually getting the damn things to work. The springs and those kind of things, they should be fine. I just wrap them up so it doesn't damage the paint. Crankshaft's in its original foam packed box. Boxes of stuff up there. Those are the original guards, which have been modified. Rear axle casings. I also still have things under the house which I need to bring out. When it comes time to load everything in the garage, they want all of that stuff out from under the house. They don't want to have to deal with dragging it out, so I'll do all that for them. I'll pull it out here. It's various torque tubes and a whole lot of boxes, basically more of those plastic tubs full of old MGB bits mainly, and Austin 7 parts. So I am getting there slowly. I suspect they won't want to take the oil, although oil's not really flammable. You'd be trying pretty hard to set it on fire in a truck. But I think it basically comes down to the quantities and the fact that they don't have hazardous goods licenses. So that's why they're hesitant to take that stuff. That's okay. I think there's going to be a few trips backwards and forwards after we move, so I'll be able to take that sort of stuff up. The other thing, of course, is they won't take gas bottles. So I've got one there for the TIG, one for the MIG welder, and my oxyacetylene, which is behind there. Obviously, they're not going to take those cylinders. Either I'll take them up myself, although I really don't like traveling with the acetylene cylinders. When I do, I always take them in the MG, and I actually strap it vertically behind the passenger seat. You're not allowed to transport them in a closed-top car because if there's any sort of leak, an explosive mixture will build up pretty rapidly and boom, the whole thing will explode. Often when you pick up new cylinders, they'll have a little picture attached to them showing what happens to a car when it explodes like that. The MG, of course, is fine because it's open top, so it's not going to build up any explosive gases, but I always worry in case I get in an accident or something like that. So I'll probably take the cylinders back to the local gas place, and then I'll sort out getting new ones when I'm up there. What I should really do is just do a bit of TIG welding practice, because I can still actually get to that and just use up the gas, because it's quite expensive and it's a shame to waste it. So I think that's pretty much everything in here. Obviously there's still quite a bit to do, but the main thing I wanted to do was have the Riley ready to be moved. I was talking about the Austin. I forgot to say I have arranged a truck for that to be taken up to the new house on. He's going to pick it up the evening before I move, and we're actually going to have to play a little bit with normally on settlement day, you don't actually get possession of the house until all the fund transfers have happened. So we're going to try and get that to happen as quickly as possible, but often it's not until lunchtime. So the issue is the movers want to deliver everything as early as they can to unload it all. But we may be able to actually unload it in the shed up there, which is the plan anyway, is we're just going to put everything in the giant shed and then slowly move things into the house as we figure out where things go. And it may be possible for us to be able to do that if the sellers are happy with that while we're waiting for the confirmation and they can actually hand over the keys to the house. I've spoken to the real estate agent. He thinks that should be fine. I'm going to be there the whole time, obviously. So hopefully that'll work. Otherwise, it's going to make moving rather awkward. And it's already a horrendous process. I think when I moved here 5 years ago, I sort of said I was never going to move again, but apparently I am. So this explains the lack of actual work on the Riley for a while. One thing that is still happening is the torque tube is off, being shortened, torque tube and drive shaft. So I need to ring the engineer who's doing that for me and see if that's going to be ready to pick up before we move up there. He did say he should be able to get it done for me, so I'll give him a ring during the week and see where he's up to. So just some idea of the ridiculous kind of things I actually have to move. There's the TARDIS there, of course. That's another one that's been marked out specially. I need to take that all apart. It's all designed to come apart, and then they're going to wrap it all in bubble wrap or whatever it is they do to be able to safely transport that. Unfortunately, there's not enough room in the new house for it. So, well, we don't think there is. It's a very small house, but obviously there'll be room in the shed. Things like this, the laser cutter, which I never quite got round to actually making its nice base and housing for. Again, I think what they'll have to do is just sort of leave it on that board and just wrap the whole thing up in plastic and bubble wrap and just carefully transport it. Underneath that black thing is a telescope, which I can actually strip down, so that's not too bad to move. Some of my toys and props and things. This is a Jacob's ladder. This weighs a ton. It's basically just a neon sign transformer, which is very heavy. There's things like the Turing Welchman bomb, which is going to need careful packing, and my railway table, which is strangely still unfinished after all these years. But this needs careful moving as well, because there's this solid glass top. The glass is only actually held in by gravity. It's just sitting there, so you can't just tip it up and have it fall out. So that one's been marked as something to move carefully. There's all sorts of random stuff. Piles of boxes. This room, which I always jokingly refer to as my computer wing of the house. This was where all my modeling stuff and electronic stuff and 3D printing stuff, prop making stuff all lived. The 3D printer, that's going to be another interesting one for them to move, I think. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. It's very awkward shape. And I can't really take it apart very easily. I could maybe take the electronics part off it, but I'll leave that up to them and see what they think. There's still computer stuff and magazines and things, and a cupboard still full of stuff. Amazingly, all of this is what was in this room. I honestly don't know how it all fitted, because it seems to be taking up an awful lot of space. I think because of the way you have to pack things, you can't just put everything and completely stuff full of boxes. So I think that's why. But yeah, considering all of this, everything that's still in here, and those other boxes in the hallway all came out of this little tiny room, is quite remarkable.